Okay, mom is good. Having a really good day. Just a good day. Thank you. And I found a stick that makes the letter S of Solilo, my lord and father. I want to say master. Who doesn't want to have a master? I mean, I watched Ninja and, Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's like, I don't want to be a martial artist, but I wanted a master. Like, maybe just a masturbator. It's like, okay, stroke. And he teaches me, like Mr. Miyagi taught Daniel-san, how to wax on and whack off. It's like, first you kick him, then you whack off to your beautiful girlfriend, Elizabeth Shue, whom you could never fuck. Thank you. And also kind of has strangely weird boyish vibes, kind of like Elizabeth Shue to me is the same as Dana Plato. It's the same person. It's a gross energy. It's like, I don't know who this fucking person is, but that is the grossest fucking woman that ever appeared in cinema. And I watched My Babysitter and all this stuff. And it's like, I was a child and I watched it, and it's like, it just gives me this sick feeling, ugh, it just makes me nauseous. Something about Elizabeth Shue just makes me fucking want to throw up. There's something so disgusting about this actor or actress, and so all of them, I think. They're just disgusting people. I feel that about them. Ugh. There's something very waxy about their veneer, and I smell something like the stench of human corpse about them. There's something very complete, deadly, royal, remarkable, and mesmerizing. The crypt, the covenant, the seal, and the lid of the Ark of the Covenant, the leisure of the human mind, just seems like a very, very dangerous thing to be ruled by. Heath Ledger. Leisure demand. Right? Acting. The standard of signs. The new standard of signs. Right? That woman's body language just wasn't interested in my body language. Not even when I put it into words. She just didn't seem to believe me or need to when I was expressing myself peacefully and honestly. So I'm going to leave this S here because I think it's amazing. Nobody's going to do anything about it. Lovely. Makes a big letter with this other stick I know, so that's good. Makes a big letter with a stick I know. Hope you don't have to blow yourself. Hope you don't have to blow yourself. This is a message to all the other chronic masturbators. I hope you never have to suck your own dick. Trust me, it is not something you want to do. It basically tastes like moldy cheese and chicken with a lot of fermentation thrown in. So it smells like moldy cheese and a chicken's vagina with a yeast infection. No, not good for man. Not tasty. Now, understand that your lady friends have a taste for such things. Or so they say. Or they're pretending, or they just love you that much. So maybe mum's the word. Okay. Now that I'm done killing the libido of the entire world, what should I do next? Let's see, children. Now we should smoke more marijuana. I call it Plan B, which is every day's plan. After it's like, I should get a job and be someone real, worthy of his 50 years on this earth. It's like, go to a tree and masturbate. Oh, that wins every time. It always gets me, and that blows my mind. When I whack up by the tree and sing with poetry and say, I just feel blimey good. I may not be understood, but sometimes I like to make some wood. I wax on, wax off, I have my thoughts, then I walk away, and I'm not gay, and that's all I have to say. La la la, la 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 la, la 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 la. I see the owl, I see the owl, I see the owl. Okay, I gotta do something. Okay. It hasn't rained too hard today. I just like to take a little break sometimes. Just throw my hat down. Fill up my pants properly. Huh? Yeah, this area more than any other has is teaching me something. It's a bit daunting. Everything about it, the people, have been a bit daunting for me. Um, everything is farther away from home. But I've walked far away from home many times. I like that I can get back home by walking. Um, I'm gonna sit down or lay down for a second. Oh. Watch the trees move in the wind, like when I was a child. And everything was just pure and new. And, I didn't take on the responsibilities of adulthood very easily. In another time, and perhaps an even less sensitive time than the one I grew up in, you would say that I had not easily adopted, nor ever completely accommodated the responsibilities and demands of adulthood, as most people of my race or species would understand it. And yet I don't live in an RV or a tent or under a box or a bridge. And I don't use needles or drugs in that sense. And I stick with the sort of medicines of North America, if you will, the natural ones. Yeah. Yeah. Nature's very good to me. It's a beautiful mental interaction that we have every day. I recognize that. She's so good to me. I don't think she sees me as an orphan at all. I think she's kind of always subtly saying, like, Landon, you're not as much of an orphan as you think you are. But it is an accurate portrayal of the conditions that you have quite admirably endured and in many cases learned a lot from and become quite adept at speaking about. That's what Mother Earth would tell me. That's love. And you deserve to have a life with a nice, intelligent female somewhere. And she's out there too. She doesn't know where, but she's out there somewhere. I'm going to hone in on her. And I'm going to stalk her and get blood and urine. Involuntarily. If she can handle that, that's my girl. Let me tell you the story of how we met. No, don't, honey. Please. First I wanted to see what she had under the hood. So I got her to bend over and lift her skirt. At that point, she thought I was a doctor and that the tongue depressor was... She's like, my first date involved a tongue depressor. Ooh. Yeah, you won't believe what he asked me to do. He told me he was a doctor. And you believed him? Well, he was very handsome. And he's quite good with that tongue depressor. He did with that tongue depressor more than I do with a vibrating egg on a good day. He used it like a toothbrush. I felt like something was plugged in. I was a little chafed the next day, though, and bugger him for that. That moss looks like Elvis. I'm all shook up. Oh, hey, hey. I'm all shook up. Now it looks like me. Landon is in the moss. This psychic tea leaf reader told me once that me and this other girl had been moss on the same tree. No, I think it was lichen. We'd been lichen on the same tree. She was actually specific. Lichen. We had been lichen on the same tree once. Powerful connection, if ever there was one. We were both lichen on the same tree. That just sounds wonderful to you and me. People say all kinds of shit. Or maybe I should say women. They have a lot to say about me. It's never all that flattering for someone to tell you things about yourself. cults, I guess, have appealed to me in life in that they represent my strong yearning to be relieved of inordinate and unnecessary, hopefully, childhood stress and feelings of abandonment. And the grief and the loss of one's father to grief of the loss of one's father, the grief of the loss of one's mother, and the loss of the mother to sexual abuse and strangely ambivalent mother. I would say at the very least that under the influence of oppression, different people, generations, sexes, genders, mothers, fathers, don't speak the same language. That the Tower of Babel is the terrible differences and range of differences in the languages that people end up speaking within their own family and to each other based on oppression. You ever deal with someone or there's something violent, it's like they don't speak your language? You might say they're not being logical. An irrational person clearly doesn't speak your language. You might say they don't speak the language of logic at all, or pleasantness or civility. People are impolite, aren't speaking your language, are they? You would say, oh, I can speak that language. Oh, I can speak that language. Oh, very good. So the Tower of Babel can be how different a language even siblings can speak in an oppressed household. That violence can ensue. And here we include in language the entire range of influences upon and the effects of those influences upon and in terms of the development and operation of the brain and of the hormones and of the nervous system and perception and language and behavior, morality and ethics and gender and sex and everything. Including profession aptitudes. Right? People that are really good in certain professions have a lot of strong aptitudes in certain areas that can be developed, and they hunger to develop them. But these hungers and these aptitudes and these skills do constitute an extraordinary, have their province in extraordinary strains upon the development of the human brain as far back as their mother's womb. You don't have to turn it into a political statement or a way to justify unemployment. It's a general way to look at the unfortunately ill effects of overemployment or just overtraining for employment, overfocus of one's entire life outcome upon employment. Because employment in itself could be completely innocuous in itself, yet just like cults are innocuous, except that the provenance of those willing to be employed in and among them and to achieve or hopefully to give as much faith as you think you need to give to reaching the laudable ends that all employment or all cults aim to serve. Not just build a better building, but build a better building for people and make a better world and everything in between. Right? The provenance of this membership, of this cooperative nature of human labor and so forth, has a lot to do with whether or not other things, you might say, will have corrupting influences eat away at the very thing you're trying to achieve. So the society gets built and progressing and doing this and wonderful. Ooh, no. Children are doing it. People are dancing. Da, 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 da. Streets here, revolutions over there. And yet it's being eaten by what's happening at the level of the home and the family and the births and all these things all over the world. It's eaten alive by the unfortunately corrupting influences that almost seem like there's meant to be a corrupting influence. There has to be something that eats away at a world that's built on something that would make people or things eat away at that world. Like building your whole city on an Indian graveyard. We've built it on the graveyard of what should be the full, if you will, liberal development of a human fetus. Now, have I told you the way the world has to be or the way reality? That is the hardest reality to hold up. I'm not saying I'm delusional and think, oh yeah, that's the hardest reality to hold up in the world. Because the only thing that can prove that reality is that everything in some way attested to it, which is a very difficult thing to contend with. Now you're learning how to deal with evil as a witch. You felt evil, blackness, depression, hypocrisy. You know something's wrong, but you restrain yourself because you know whatever you know, and probably down deep in your bones we all do. It doesn't always come out the right way, and maybe it shouldn't, unless we're by ourselves somewhere. Because at that level, people can speak very different languages, and just knowing that, makes us vulnerable to violence. We restrain ourselves a lot, and we're vulnerable to all kinds of things. The better our brains work, the more we're fresh meat to very industrialized people. And that, could be my delusion. It's the most difficult reality to hold up. It's difficult because it could be so completely pathological and wrong, and it's difficult because it could be so completely true. Like the sun could be really far away and it could be really close. Ouch. Okay. Let's go. We gotta go. We gotta get moving. We gotta be disciplined here. No more cold for daddy. No more cold for daddy. He's going home right now. No more cold for daddy. Sitting under bough. There's no more cold for daddy. He's going home right now. No more cold for daddy, because he's going home right now. Yeah, my arms are tired. My right one for sure. From working with the stones yesterday. That's interesting. My dad didn't do anything that his dad did. My dad didn't do anything his dad did. I find that kind of good information, I think that's a remarkable fact. I think sometimes people don't understand that I like remarkable facts. It's not always because there's something bad about it, but there's something admirable about it. I mean, my dad's dad had been a butcher at one time, I believe a chimney sweep at one time, or had worked in a butcher's, and I think now I take from my understanding that he was domestically abused a lot by my dad's mother, who in turn certainly did not have anywhere near the husband that she wanted, and felt compelled to abuse him to the point of reducing him to a blubbery alcoholic mess. The way that my father would often reduce my mother to a blubbering, alcoholic, suicidal mess. Do you see how that continues through the behavior? So the mother, my grandmother, my dad's side, to how my dad was treating my mother. So imagine like a man getting treated the way someone's father treated their daughter, or someone's father treated the way someone's mother treated their father, or someone's father treated their mother. It's so intricate and interesting and complex, isn't it? Because that's what I figured out. So that my dad treated my mom and reduced her to a blubbery alcoholic mess because he was a bit of an alcoholic in his own right, and everyone drank back then. And but he could dominate her, and the mother could dominate the father, and found all the problems necessary to do so. Now, I've lived with sociopathic women who will find anything and everything even if someone among their acquaintance sexually assaults me, this woman will start sexually assaulting me. They go yin off the charts. So I know so very well the mortifying effects of a woman who's simply psychotic, and a woman for whom you could never do enough except by letting her ride your cock and tell you how to think and live and everything else, because a narcissist of this kind could never, ever let you be yourself, and will always find reasons why, to spread awful things about how you are not the kind of person that you could be or should be. And it's a complete scapegoating. It's gaslighting, right? These are narcissistic psychotics who gaslight, lure and gaslight the opposite sex. Oh, there's lots of noises going on in here. It's a creaky woodland. Hi. And yes, is that deadly? Yes. Have I seen that? Oh, yes. Many, many days of my life, thousands of days of my life, in fact. So, and from my own mother, who had it done to her by my father. So, you see how it passes on. And my mother's children did it to me, my brothers and sisters, right? It's like, how can you ever curb that appetite? You can talk about trust, you can talk about reconciliation, you can talk about this and that. Never. Because this energy, this monstrous spirit, this force in the human mind, has a mind of its own. And it can either shock or live in shock or both. And to take time within a human family, as I have, to articulate it and to spend my life learning to respect it and to understand the boundaries that it has made for me, that has precluded having a family. In a 5-minute or 5-second span of my life, I lost all my relatives to a catastrophic amount of violence from my own family. And I had to find out why that was, the difference in what's going on in our minds. Because, now it's become something medically quite real. It's a destructive energy that's come into reality, right? Imagine if a rapist out there thinks about raping someone, but he's never raped someone before. And then one day it becomes real and he's raped someone. My family raped me. So it must have lived somewhere in their mind. Something that they need to do, something that they feel compelled to do in many ways throughout their life, which they increasingly had to do to me. And the answer to that is, in some sense, scapegoating and gaslighting, and the nature of human sacrifice in popular culture and religion, and spiritual jargon, vernacular, gender studies. I mean, everything's twisted. And again, a difficult hypothesis. There's a twisting to things. And I think there are people like myself who we get into confronting it more and more. We just don't trust the world anymore. We know that people and things are always twisted. And it's not always here, it's not always out there, but it's around, like a spirit, like a darkness. It's something that lives like a pall upon the human voice. And you hear it in the way women talk about men, and the way women have talked to me about about things and how they treated me, or how they've needed to treat me, and how with some little stimulation, which is always accidental on my part, and to do with basic human boundaries and my own safety, that things became dramatically worse on the one hand, and more, dominant or tyrannical or feudal, if you will, more slanderous, dangerous, more exclusive, and how different types of people seem to all speak the same language, except me. And how that can make you feel when and to hear that even some of these people have had the same thing done to them by their own masters, and other psychopaths in their various cults. But they can't leave the cult. They can't leave that mentality. They can't see that they're capable of participating in it, because the same person who's done it to them, like their cult leader, their father, or their mother, their training, their life, the alcoholism of generations of their family, academics, famous American writers, things like that, in their family, that they can't get out of the cult of it all. They can't see themselves capable of it. Yet at the same time, the person doing it to them console them by telling them that they themselves are capable of little else, unless they remain under the control of the master. In this way, they hold them prisoner. And you see these kinds of psychological rackets. How could you not consider this mind the mind of a rapist, and that training these disciples to be rapists? To get a real criminological study here and profile, which I think I'm doing a very compassionate job of. And then how could you not suddenly start to correlate this with feminine-oriented behavior, and where it starts? I mean, I've studied men and women, but I've lived with women more and studied them, because you could do little else than study them. Because if I don't study what I learn, it's just, I suffer from it. I mean, it's just shocking. It's demoralizing me. I've never met a woman that I would have wanted to be around when I was 5 years old, other than my mother. And my mother's been violent enough, but there's compassion there, because she's family. And because I've pursued a way of gaining more of her trust by learning more about where it came from and what happened to her when she was a child. And showing her, proving to her, more than I could ever prove to God himself, that my life has largely been about little else. When I told this sociopathic female on the beach the other day that there had been some maternal issues in my family, she just seemed uninterested in my turn of mind at all. I just didn't get it. Yeah, they never would. No sophistication in the mind at all, just filled with these spiritual books, academic books about how to be a connected West Coast woman who's on the path to enlightenment by helping people. She's convinced, I think, she has to go through like being with people like me, whatever that is, to get up her ladder. And she's already told me, essentially in the first few minutes of talking to me, that whatever my path in life will be, I'll basically have to do what she's doing, which is why a lot of New Age students and therapeutic clients can only become as sociopathic as their therapist. So it's a profile of socialized dominance. Carefully done. As much as you might see some aristocratic actress in a movie be carefully snobbish to assert her position, the effect is the same if the mode, or you're not seeing something in a cultural lens of like, oh, someone's being a snob. Someone's just telling you that they're a healer and they can help you because they know where you're at, because they used to be there, but they eventually met masters who gave them some free advice. Chances are, I bet, that at some point she lived with someone or knows someone, probably a man, who took her under their wing and taught her how to be a professional sociopath. Probably the man that she lives with, whoever it is, has a lot of control over her. Creepy. Yeah. It's a very difficult subject to communicate about. I just had an emotional nostalgia about when I was young, and I'd never had any thoughts about how strange people really were, or how pathological they could be. You know, the grocer was just the grocer, the guy at the candy shop was just the guy at the candy shop. And you didn't really have to even pay that much attention to them when you're 2 or 3 or 4 years old. Isn't that interesting? And nobody minds. It's like you can just be in your own world. And if everyone just was true to their territory, you know, be true to your own territory in the world, and you don't have to have what territory other people have. People have their own worlds. They may have similar looking houses. They may all have more money in their bank account than you do, but they all have their strange worlds. And most of them are oppressed. Have mercy, have compassion, keep the magical faith alive, as many of them do as well, because we and they live usually in some oppression, and their lives give evidence of it. They live in their own worlds, and none of our worlds, separate as they may, uniform as they may be, similarly clothed in real estate or attire or manner of address or address, none of them are as prominent a component of the fundamental power structures of the world as they might like to believe. Their security is obtained by a manner of royal decree, by a manner of sufficient training to occupy your level and be satisfied with it. People interact with the banking system, they interact with the real estate system, they interact with the media system, the legal system, the medical system, the academic system, the military system, systems of travel, professions of art, artifice, finance, science, and all kinds of logistical support, occupations and sales, and performance-oriented occupations. Everyone's moving around, busy and aspiring. And only a very, very small number of people around you will ever go beyond the containment of and the separation, which is made to be non-existent almost. It's very, like you think, like just your separation from royalty is like the armed guards at the Windsor Castle sort of thing. And separation is actually less distinct in the respect that this royalty is entertaining you every day and producing, or at least in being the face of their production, and the masks, like Grecian masks, of the production of, you know, a lot of the fiction/reality of the human mind, along with the various twisted narratives of medicine and science, anthropology, religion, history, and spirituality of the world. So to find like what is real, and that you're even convinced in enough to spend any amount of time concerning yourself about it. I mean, most people believe in evolution and global warming and climate change, but no one really concerns themselves much with it, you know, except maybe children. It's like political activism for children, because they're brainwashed with it at a young age, right? But there are more things that are not worth thinking about, that are really worth thinking about, than are supposed to be worth thinking about. There are more things that are more evident, imminent, and within your every breath, your mind, your thoughts about your body and your body combined, that are sacred and true and completely among the wonderful singing knowledge of whales and stars, And all the medicines that have been felt and honored by all the wonderful native people of the world for hundreds and thousands and millions of years. Of that, I assure you. I'm not a specialist. I think someone who gets to say such things. That's all. Gets to feel them inside and go, so I'll keep that one. I mean, essentially, you're born native, and then things happen to you to make you a worker. And it all seems pretty justified, whatever gets you there. Because, the whole story is that no matter where you come from, the harder it is, the stronger you are. And everybody, no matter how hard your life is, someone's had it harder and got to the top, so don't feel sorry for yourself. And there are many people who come home and chain smoke, drink half a case of beer and watch the game. You don't want to be that person, right? So we can be the wonderful worker whose father has raised them into the wonderful sacrifices of physical and technical proficiency in professional capacity, building, construction, the way, hunting, fishing, sports. And there are neuroses that crop up among the working class. And maybe it is something so simple as having enough attention from your father that whatever you end up doing, it's you're just a more secure person. And too bad if you don't feel secure, because it's all about choices, and you should just choose to be a more secure person. Some people, I think, are fated to learn to live with certain insecurity, whereas people who have more security do it in large part because they don't want to have too much insecurity, right? Thank you. They have security because they don't want to have too much insecurity. They've never wanted to learn to put up with not being able to pay the rent, or not knowing where you're going to live, or having to deal with the landlord. You want to live in the right part of town. You work steady, you work well, you study hard, and with a little help from a fairly well-to-do middle-class family, you'll never have to worry about money. And it's like that where I live. It's probably like that in a lot of places. And then you get people who learn to live with abuse or insecurity, depression. They learn to live with life's sadnesses and griefs. And the other people learn to solve them all. And steal your life like a thief in the night at the same time. They are your professors, your bureaucrats, your working middle class, your educated middle class, your administrators, the ones who aspire to local political office, or if not, just become a real estate broker. Something that the Chamber of Commerce can be really proud of, with a beautiful picture on Facebook. And they're actors and liars and thieves enough, and also very dutiful people, unfortunately or not. Everyone in the world apparently is very dutiful and loyal, and really believes in what they're doing, because ultimately, even though the profits are quite extraordinary, they're really all about helping people. And this is the wonderful middle-class cocktail. They all want to help people. They all love that their job involves helping people. And it really goes for a lot. I knew a middle-class fireman chief who his entire life was just falling apart. He let everyone down. He's a completely unreliable, pathological liar. But he was a great fireman. Probably still is. Wherever you are, Tyrone, here. His house, his relationship with children was barbaric at best. This guy had no idea how to better take care of himself. But he could save your life if you were in a wreck. Right? So it's just a beautiful way of looking at knowledge. If people have to survive it, and you could say, well, his daughters are probably doing great, and a lot of people have tough lives. He's a single parent, divorced parent, what have you, stressful job, and he told me all the reasons. not for the reason why his house was completely messed up, dog shit piling up in the yard, beer cans in the living room, and months of young girls' underwear, wrappers, and food all over the TV room. It's just a disgusting kitchen, a dog that never got walked enough. I started actually becoming his wife for $600 a month. I was his live-in maid immediately from day one. I volunteered to clean. His house needed to be cleaned. His children needed to be properly cared for. I didn't care for them. I just did a few things, like got them to clean up the house and tried to help them clean up their working books for their binders for school. But a social services woman who was a friend of his broke into the house and prevented us from doing it because she didn't like me. So she interrupted probably the first time an adult had ever helped this brilliant young girl just to organize her binder properly. Something you've got to do to succeed at school, right? But she had this female predator around her, who of course assumed I was a predator because they're always projecting, right? And I left. I wasn't invasive, I didn't say anything, I didn't argue, I just went, oh, that's too bad. She's really quite a brilliant young girl, and a little, if I'd stayed there a few months and did some tutoring with her, it would have made a big difference in her life. But they just don't, with narcissists and stuff, they just don't see what's good. They don't see what's valuable around them. They don't know what things are really worth, and she would have to figure out how to organize her own binder. And that lady wasn't going to help her do it, and probably never did, Isn't that something? Is it possible for you to acknowledge my presence here? Is it possible? And so these types of predators, like these types of women, will initiate all kinds of passive-aggressive territorial violence. And if you so much as raise any objection, right, they'll fucking eviscerate you, right? These are basically violent women. Okay. I have family who work for social services, and they're mostly quite crude, violent people. Usually overweight, poisoned to the core. A perfect friend for this guy, right? A profession of eminent care for children, yet who doesn't give a fuck about anybody but themselves. I mean, we found a way to do that to human beings. You have to admit it. We found a way to do that to people. Right? And we have to own up to it. It may not be my fault, but I'm a white male, and somehow we've helped make women this way and make men this way. Right? I wish those girls well. That was about 10 years ago now, so they're probably almost 20 years old each. I hope they're well. I mean, who am I to interfere with people's lives? It's kind of a prime directive from Star Trek. You start doing that in a man's home. I would turn from being something that could help his entire home to someone who would be considered the bane of his family. So I know all too well the cancer of the white mind, the cancer of the female mind. Okay? If someone starts to be competent about actually dealing with life's problems, the first thing they want to do is sacrifice them, because they're addicted to sacrificing the father, you see. Right? Their father was taken from them, and so their brains have to sacrifice the father in order to fulfill their developmental sense of identity. Okay? The same thing with impotent homosexuals. They have to sacrifice the father. The father principle is sacrifice. It's quite common for Christians to grow up impotent and to become homosexual. Think of the ones that never actually make the full transition. They're taking care of children and orphans and little girls, and they can't satisfy their compulsions with someone of the same sex, so they go for a child instead. I bet you a lot of pedophiles are homosexuals or impotent. Right? Not that homosexuals are pedophiles, but a lot of pedophiles are homosexual. They have a similar provenance to their particular impotence. And impotence is something shared by all sexes, by the way, not just homosexuals. But I think it figures prominently into the sex function of the human race at this point, unfortunately. Hey, chicka baby boom, but chicka baby. Hey, chicka baby boom, but chicka baby. Well, I'm going to sit here for a bit, or stand here. Hopefully nobody comes along. Just going to take a moment. It is a nice day. Florida, a serious section. So I look